Hello everyone, it's me, Sunbird, your favorite cat-based YouTuber. If you've seen my latest video, you'll know that I'm preparing to release the first pages of my graphic novel, The Lion's Daughter, featuring the characters of almost all of my map parts these past 6 years. I've been working full speed ahead on Chapter 1, and I'm so happy to announce that all 42 fully colored pages are complete. I will release 3 pages a week on Tumblr and DeviantArt starting tomorrow, and running up until the end of March. And during that time, I'll be working on Chapter 2, so I intend for there to be as few gaps between chapter releases as possible. Once all the pages are released, I plan to also upload the chapter to sites such as Webtoons and Instagram, or just make an easy PDF option available. I'm always open to recommendations on that front. The Lion's Daughter is my passion project, and the story and its characters has completely consumed my life since I originally conceptualized them in 2016 as a freshman in high school. Seeing the story take shape this past year with the support of the wonderful people in the Sunbird's Roost Discord server has been so amazing, and I'm forever grateful for those of you in the Rabbit Council who sat through chapter readings and lore dumps and drew funny memes of these characters. Speaking of chapter readings, The Lion's Daughter contains 24 chapters with scripts that are all completed and ready to be adapted in comic form, each made up of about 40 pages on average. If you do the math, that's nearly 1,000 pages total, and I am dedicating my life to their completion. I'm saying it here and now. I will never abandon this project. I feel it is my life's mission. Ideally, I would like to print hard copies of the novel, each containing a volume of 8 chapters with 3 volumes total. For now, the chapters will be released individually in a digital format. My plan is to release Chapter 1 for free as a tantalizing appetizer, while subsequent chapters will be available for purchase at a modest sum. And when physical copies are released, I plan to make a significant discount available for those who have purchased digital copies. For now, I'd like to leave you all with a video I made earlier this year for the aforementioned Rabbit Council, the group of people who had VIP access to the story and characters as they were being written down. It's just an OBS screen capture, but I explain the concept and setting of the story and the characters rather well, so I'd like to release it to you now. Thanks so much for listening to my ramblings and watching my cat animations. I'm forever thankful for this community, and I really hope that you enjoy this story. Okay, so this is going to act as the introductory video to my in-progress graphic novel series called The Lion's Daughter. I've been working on the comic pages for this since about 2017, just sketch versions, but just because of that fact that it's been so long, a lot of the earliest pages are incredibly out of date and need major revisions, so I'm not able to go page by page through chapters 1 and 2. However, I am going to give a general introduction to the series to get people familiar with who the characters are and where they are, as well as kind of talk about what I intend to occur in these 2 chapters before we start going through the ones which are more developed, which will still be changed, of course, but the ones that I feel are a little more solid. I was really just kind of learning how to make pages at this point, and you can see a lot of progression here, but nonetheless, I'm going to jump right into what The Lion's Daughter is. The Lion's Daughter is a historical fiction graphic novel series, about 25 chapters total. It takes place in an alternate universe in which cats replace humans as the civilized species on Earth. They wear clothes, they have empires. It's essentially human history is the same, make them cats, have some fun with that. So, in the small town of Chamberfield, New Hampshire, the Brown family maintains a respectable life. Mr. Brown holds a relatively lucrative business position in the adjacent city of Fuchsford, while Mrs. Brown takes care of the home and their 2 youngest daughters, Audrey and Louise, in addition to her older daughter, Abigail. So this story takes place in 1913. It is starting in 1913, September or like late August, and then it ends in February 1914. So they're enjoying their quiet country life. It says, however, internal and external factors threaten to disrupt the Brown family's apparent tranquility. Their story addresses themes of coming of age, mental illness, longing, and grief, alongside the historical pressures of industrialization, immigration, and women's suffrage. So one of my problems developing this story is I was developing this through a bit, essentially once I started high school. I had some of these characters earlier, revamped them, repurposed them for the story, but because I grew up in the Warrior Cats fandom, and I grew up only knowing how to draw cats. Of course, I wanted to write a story about cats. However, the other creature in my mind says, so why are they cats? You have to justify it. So my little, tiny little justification is, one, I think showing anthropomorphic animals in a civilized setting can help push those kind of themes of like what does it mean to be civilized? How does civilized society contrast maybe with our nature being forced into crowded and polluted cities? There's a definite contrast with the two main locations, Chamberfield, which is right in the middle of rural woodland New Hampshire, and Fuchsford, which is on the coast and is incredibly industrialized. And so as we go back and forth between them, I really want to highlight that we have the main characters wearing clothes, but they are essentially anatomically cats for the most part. They have opposable thumbs. They can stand up on two legs, but their natural state is to walk on four legs, and they will run on four legs and do little cat things. So essentially, I said, okay, I can justify them being cats if I have this nature versus civilization theme, and I can also justify it with women's suffrage because I happen to run into some beautiful historical documents on Tumblr showing. I must have them. Let me look at them. Hold on. Close your eyes, everyone. There's some spoilers here. But I swear I have in the lore folder. I swear I had them in the lore folder, but there was it was like some like parodies for women's suffrage where it's like, oh, what's next? Votes for cats, and they had photographs of cats dressed up as suffragettes demanding the vote for the cat. And I think this is a very female-centered story. I also think with cats being very much associated with femininity, it works for having a kind of feminist-centered story. The art direction was inspired by the stories of Beatrix Potter and Patrick McHale's Over the Garden Wall, while the story draws influence from Warriors and the Little House books. Of course, I think a lot of the drama is inspired by Warriors drama, but I grew up with a collection of Beatrix Potter illustrated stories, which I loved, and my favorite one was The Tale of Tom Kitten. So I very much based like a lot of Chamberfield is based off, and like the main character's home is based off of the Tom Kitten's home and his mother, and the way they walk and everything like that is essentially taken straight out of Beatrix Potter. And I even like it was even more so before, but Over the Garden Wall was really kind of a renaissance in creativity for me. It really inspired me to like want to push my art in a really atmospheric direction, especially the location in general, because I learned, oh, Over the Garden Wall takes place in New England. I want to put my story in New England. It used to be in regular England, like back when I first made Abigail in middle school. I thought it was going to be like a regular story about cats in the human world, and cats like being unfairly treated because of their connections to witchcraft, which is why the name was Abigail. So I moved it to New England, and I put it in a historical setting because Over the Garden Wall has characters in a historical setting, an old American setting, and I put it in the 1910s because one, I feel like it's an underrepresented time period, and two, I can just barely get away with not drawing a lot of cars. Cars still exist and are important for the story, but this is kind of it's kind of a transitional time period where you see horse-drawn carriages and automobiles occupying the roads at the same time, which I also think is it's a very liminal and eerie kind of transitional phase. I think there's, was it Virginia Woolf? She says like, there's a quote by Virginia Woolf that's like, let me look for it. Virginia Woolf, Everything Changed, 1912. A change in the human character. One of Virginia Woolf's most memorable quotes goes like this: "On or around December 1910, human character changed. I'm not saying that one went out, as one might into a garden, and there saw that a rose had flowered or a hen had laid an egg. The change was not sudden and definite like that, but a change there was, nevertheless." Woolf was writing about the arrival of modernism, both its visual art and its writing. And I didn't like Mrs. Dalloway when I was reading it, but maybe I'll like it now. And I think Miss Wolf has a good insight here, and I'm incredibly interested in this transitional time period in the 1910s. However, I think I've lingered on that too long, so let's move forward to the characters. The main character is Audrey Brown. She's 12 years old. She is essentially at the age where she is graduating from her little one-room schoolhouse education, and is thinking about where she's going in life next. She comes from a relatively wealthy family, so the plan is to send her to boarding school. She's really smart, though this isn't necessarily appreciated in the current script. But essentially, she has a strong sense of morality and is very emotionally perceptive, but struggles to make friends on account of her bluntness. She is a little bit on the autism spectrum, I would say. But most of all, she wants the approval of her older sister Abigail, who for most of Audrey's life has been distant and inaccessible, emotionally inaccessible and physically inaccessible. Abigail was absent from the family from a little after the time Audrey and Louise were born to maybe when they were about the age of 5 or 6. She came back. Out of all her siblings, Audrey's the most like her mother. That's important to me. You guys don't know much about her mother, but she enjoys nature, climbing trees, so she's one of the more feral children. Louise is her sister. They are litter mates, so they're essentially twins born at the same time. The cats have litters, varying in size from. Honestly, it's like a warrior's sized litter, to be honest. She's the secondary protagonist. I very much see Audrey and Louise as a squirrel paw and leaf paw duo here. Very much like I don't even care. It's squirrel paw and leaf paw, and Louise is a leaf paw. She's neat, orderly, and soft-spoken, but she has a big heart and a sensitive soul. When I was originally writing the script, I tended to fall into this pit where I would make Louise like really quiet and unemotional. But I think she is really goofy and sweet, just a little not as like loud as Audrey. So she's just a really sweet girl. Um, and we'll see more of Louise. She's just she's the very she doesn't get into much trouble compared to Audrey. I don't need to say more. It's a squirrel paw and leaf paw scenario. And then we have Esther, who is Audrey's new friend. Esther has just moved to Chamberfield from New York City. She is an immigrant. I believe she was actually born in the old country. Yeah, it says they're born in the old country. But she would have been really young when they moved. And she's when I was first developing the story, she and Louise had a very similar personality. Her name was originally Lucy, which you'll probably see in some of the scripts. I changed it because too similar, and also she became much more. She was originally much more shy and sweet. She is incredibly spunky and like sassy now, which I really enjoy for her. She's kind of like a young proto. She filled a young like proto feminist role like just developing, which I didn't intend for her. She's very much like she would be in like a social movement when she gets older. She questions she asks a lot of questions. I just find in the script she's always asking questions, and she doesn't quite she's not passive, and in that way she serves as a foil to Louise. And so Audrey really admires her, and they have a good friendship in which like Esther is actively helping Audrey with things that Audrey can't really talk about with her family, who are very conflict averse. Then Abigail is the older sister character. She's 29. I think that's after her. Yeah, so she's 28, and then her birthday happens in story, and she turns 29. She's. I love Abigail, but she's essentially the old spinster sister who is very withdrawn and has things in her past that are not discussed. She essentially suffers from depression, and that is a cause for concern for Audrey, who feels like the reason that Abigail doesn't want to hang out is maybe that she doesn't like her. She's best friends with the school teacher Maribel. She loves knitting. I learned how to knit so that I could accurately draw Abigail knitting in the story. She was originally like a big seamstress. I think she still would do it, but I think with my own experience knitting, I just want her to do knitting more. Gloriana and Charles are the parents. I'll just say that. They have more stuff here you can read if you want. Maribel's the teacher. Nolan is Maribel's husband. There's pretty important in the first half of the story is the conflict within their marriage. Nolan is not ready to grow up and likes to go out into the city, and he's the leader of his little band. And Maribel just really indulges him and will not make any criticisms of this, which Abigail takes issue with because Abigail loves Maribel and doesn't want her husband screwing her over. And Nolan is great. He's great. He's fun. These are the members of Nolan's band. They are Betty, Eddie, and Homer. They are a fantastic trio. You can read more about them here, but I will just kind of skim over them for now. There are more characters, but these are the characters who are mostly introduced at the start of the story, and to introduce other characters now in this document would be quite spoilerific, because it's pretty easy to divide The Lion's Daughter into a part 1 and a part 2, and you'll have to get to part 2 to see what happens in part 2 and see those new characters who are introduced. This is the first page I drew. I remember working on these pages when I was on the bus back from summer camp, winter camp, and it's chapter 1 is this is really me finding my footing, drawing these characters for the first time. It opens with a scene of Audrey and Louise walking home from school, walking to school. It introduces this character Adrian, who is essentially Audrey's rival. He is a school bully. He's kind of like a fat. He's essentially a Porky Minch character. If any of you have played Earthbound or Mother 3, he's pretty great. He's kind of got a thing for Louise. I'm not really sure if that's as big of a thing as it was originally, but he and Audrey don't like each other. Blah blah blah. This is me just like introducing. Oh, here's a school setting. There's a character named Henry. Don't really care about him anymore. There he is. They give like a gift to Maribel that Abigail had made for her, like a little scarf, because Abigail is still like just being really, she's very much courting Maribel unsuccessfully. When I revise these, I kind of want to start more in medias res, which I'm not doing a very good job of. I don't even think I will in the revision, but I want to kind of start it in the middle of a conversation between the parents. We'll see how that goes. And in the first chapter, what's happening right here is they start walking home after school. I very much didn't want to just draw school because I don't think that's very interesting. There's a few little school scenes, especially in chapter 7, which are great, but chapter 7 is the most of what we see of the actual school. Audrey goes back and she sees these two adults that she's never seen before, and they have a child with them, and she's like, oh, a new girl has moved in. Oh my gosh, a new girl has moved in. That's quite the trope. And she's like, oh, there's a new girl. You think maybe she'll be my friend? And Louise is like, yeah, sure. And then she goes home and asks her mom, and her mom's like, yeah, sure. And then Abigail, oh, here's something we can pause on. Where is Abigail? Okay, so, like, here's one thing, Audrey expressing her excitement that she'll be able to, like, show this new girl around, and then Abigail jumping in saying, I wouldn't jump to conclusions. You don't even know for certain that those cats are moving here. It's best not to get your hopes up. And I don't know, this conversation probably won't be in the final, but it was very much me wanting to show the relationship, the strained relationship that Audrey and Abigail have at this moment. Abigail's not meaning any harm, but she is like essentially hurting Audrey's feelings and kind of shutting her down. But then Audrey won't challenge that. She's like, oh yeah, that's true, I won't, Abigail, because she really wants Abigail's approval. But it's essentially a family drama starting out. They go outside to play, and Abigail, their mom forces Abigail to go out with them. And Audrey tries to give Abigail a shiny rock that she finds in the stream, and Abigail's like, oh, that's kind of gross. So I will probably still keep the main focus of chapter 1 on an Audrey-Abigail interaction in which Audrey's reaching out to Abigail, and Abigail is not responding to that. This guy's name is Percy. He's just kind of here. He's their neighbor. But essentially, that's the main stuff I need to keep for chapter 1. There's just so little. It's so slow that I'll have to just change things entirely. Chapter 2 is